These noses are so pointy, my goodness. This is obviously the anime, but the Demon Slayer manga was drawn by artist Koyoharu Gotoge. A lot of what makes this art style unique happens in the faces, so let's start there. Now, in terms of the faces, a lot of the characters have pretty exaggerated proportions. A lot of this is pretty typical anime style stuff, but a lot of it is quite unique. Here is what I would consider to be a pretty realistic set of proportions. If I were to draw a realistic portrait, this is pretty much the kind of thing that I would start with. Here is how that compares with an anime character from Demon Slayer. Some of these differences are really pretty common in most anime and manga. For example, the larger eyes, the smaller nose, and the little pointy chin. Equally pretty common in anime and manga is the way that the facial features all get sort of squished down. Notice how in the Demon Slayer image, this whole section is shifted quite a lot downward. As I trace over the original Demon Slayer image, notice how exaggerated the proportions are compared to the realistic version that we started with. In particular, notice how the eyebrows sit in the middle of the head, so that we've got just as much space above the eyebrows to the top of the head as we have below the eyebrows down to the bottom of the chin. Here again is that comparison between the Demon Slayer and the realistic proportions. You can really see how much more forehead space we've got in the Demon Slayer version, almost laughably so. What distinguishes Gotoge's art style from a more generic anime or manga art style is the way that she emphasizes or exaggerates some of the less commonly emphasized features, such as the ears or the nose, or in some cases the chin. The Demon Slayer art style often involves exaggerating the size of the ears and adjusting their placement. Many characters like this one here are depicted with really much larger ears than you might expect. The ears are also placed slightly lower than you would normally see. If we look at more realistic ear placement, for example like in this photo, you can see the way that the ear starts roughly at the nose and then it ends roughly at the eyebrow. If we look at this Demon Slayer drawing, you can see that the ear starts all the way down at the mouth and it ends quite a bit before the eyebrow, more in line with the eyes. We can see it again here very clearly in these two drawings. One thing that actually really stresses me out about this style is just how much detail there is in the ears. Now I know it's not exactly a photorealistic level of detail, but it's still way more detail than we're used to seeing in most manga styles, and it is a pain to try and replicate all of this. I started to try and do it here, and then I got annoyed. Noses in Demon Slayer can often have a lot more detail than you'd expect as well. A lot of manga just use a single dash or a dot to represent the nose, but if we have a look at some of these noses, you can see there's quite a bit more detail. Here we've got an indication of both nostrils, and we've got an indication of the bridge of the nose, and we've also even got the outline of this left-hand side of the nose. Again, we've got the nostrils and the bridge and the outline. Looking at a face from underneath, we can see the nostril and then the outline of the nose, and then this line in the middle which suggests that underside of the nose. Again, the nostril, and then the bridge, and then this extra line which indicates the overall form. Even in this simple example, we've still got the nostrils and a little bit of a wing. And then we've got these lines here which show the form. Compare a more stereotypical way of drawing anime noses, which is just like this. If we take a closer look, you can often see more detail in the chin as well. You see this little triangle here which indicates the groove where the chin dips in and then out. There it is again from this angle. And she even does it on her female characters. Gotoge is also a big fan of using extra wrinkle lines to show the way that the face is stretching or crunching when we have an exaggerated expression. You can see an awful lot of those lines here. The line art for Demon Slayer is in some ways pretty standard and in some ways pretty interesting. Pretty standard in that it's the usual very thin line art together with a little bit of line variation in some areas where the shadows are, for example under the chin here. But one of the more unique things about the line art is that Gotoge will often use broken lines or dashes in place of full uninterrupted lines. You can see some of them here. But you more often see them on faces. You can see them on all of the beads of sweat here. None of these beads of sweat is a closed circle. They've all got a little piece missing. If you look at the eyelids, it's not just one smooth, uninterrupted eyelid line like this, but it's three separate lines with a gap in between them. You can also see it on the lower eyelid there. You can even see on the mouth of this character there is a gap here where the line is not closed. Obviously, when it comes to a realistic face, there are no lines on realistic faces. It's all very soft and subtle variations in tone. When you're drawing with manga, you obviously are limited in that you only have a very small range of tones, and then you have to do everything else with line. But drawing very strong, uninterrupted, continuous lines for things like the eyelids can often come across a little bit too bold and draw a little bit too much attention. Breaking up the lines in the way that Gotoge does just adds a little bit more delicacy, a little bit more softness. One last note about the line work, and I'm not really sure why she does this, but instead of drawing the irises with circles, she quite often uses a series of connected, straight and rigid lines that give the impression of a circle. Even the pupil here, you can see this is a diamond and not a circle. I haven't really seen any other manga artist do that before. But since we're talking about eyes, the eyes are something that Gotoge uses to really define her characters. It's pretty common to use big expressive eyes like this in anime and manga anyway. What sets Gotoge apart in this case is the way that different eyes have different patterns inside of them, and there really are no rules as to what can appear inside of an iris. Look at this one, this has all of these X hash lines. There's this character that has no iris. Nezuko has two different types of eyes depending on whether she's in her sort of demon state or not. She has this very round and soft cutesy eye, and then this much sharper demonic eye. Tanjiro has this sort of ink blot with a white pupil. Generally speaking, every time you meet a new character, they have a new pattern or detail inside of their eyes. And this is really something that defines the Demon Slayer art style, is all of the different variation that you can get within the eyes. Sometimes very sharp shapes, sometimes very round shapes. Sometimes things are very blurry, sometimes things are very sharp. Sometimes there's hatching inside the eye, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's a gradient, sometimes not. It's really wide open as to what can appear inside of the iris. When it comes to rendering, it's really quite straightforward. We see that almost everything is either black or white. Very occasionally there's a close-up shot like this where you've got a grey tone, but it's very much the exception. One standout thing for the Demon Slayer manga, however, is that we have these very large areas of black, yes, but then we also go back in and we use white line art to bring out some of the detail. See, I can take just about any of these images here. You can see that the hair is black, but then we use the white fine liner to show the form and the edges of the hair. Or in this case, where the jacket is black, but then we use the white to bring out the collar and the creases. Alright, to round things up, I'm going to be drawing my own original character. Her name is Rin, and I'm going to be drawing her in the Demon Slayer art style, just so you can see how you can use all of this advice to really capture the Demon Slayer art style. Other than that, it's time to wrap things up, and it wouldn't be YouTube if we didn't wrap things up by advertising. I have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/AaronTheArtist. Over there you can get high-resolution exclusives of all of my artwork. You can also get exclusive artwork that I don't post anywhere else, including the spicy stuff that everybody wants to see if they are people of culture. Anyway, supporting me on Patreon helps keep this channel alive. Have a nice day.